Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanallah. We begin by praising Allah Ta'ala Azza wa Jal. We allow the choices of mercies and blessings to be upon the one that I love and the one that you love. A mercy unto mankind, none other than Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. For the sake of barakah and blessings, I beseech each and every one of you out there to send salutations upon our noble Prophet. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad abdik wa rasulik. وصلي على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. Beloved viewers, we come to you live on Salam Media, and you can pass the message around. Tell everyone out there it's an important program this evening. We're discussing the Syrian conflict. 9 years on, the conflict continues, the pain continues, the suffering continues, the displacement continues. So send the message out. You can catch us live right here on Salam Media. And we are streaming to you live on Facebook, Twitter, as well as YouTube. And if you need to listen in, it's www.salammedia.com/listen live. Yeah, thanks to Salam Media. And of course, yes, the use of technology, we can connect with each another across the globe, far and here. And today I've got a host and I got a galaxy of individuals that have been playing their part and playing their role in helping to bring some kind of relief, whether it's an advocacy, whether it's in the humanitarian field, in various aspects, trying to bring some kind of relief to the Syrian conflict. And we have a host of individuals, who have a wealth of goodness, who come with a wealth of experience, and they bring a host and a load of different knowledge as well as experience to the platform this evening, and we're going to be chatting with them very, 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 very soon. Yes, talking about the Syrian conflict, I think close on to 9 to 10 million people have been displaced. We have about 500,000 orphans across the globe. I think in the last decade, this is the one conflict that stands out. And this is the one conflict which has really shaken the ground across the globe. It has shaken the hearts of many a people. We thought we had the Palestinian conflict, but when the Syrian conflict came about, we realized it was not going to be just too soon that this will leave us. And unfortunately, there does not seem to be any light in sight. This is the reality. Hence, it is making it a bit complex for humanitarians. It is making it complex for different advocates. It is making it complex for different individuals that are trying to deal with this matter. Ladies and gentlemen, the viewers of Salam Media, whoever has joined in, we take this opportunity to welcome you. And thank you so much for those of you that have joined us. And I want to take this opportunity to thank our panel here this evening. First and foremost, my very dear Sister Catherine, who is a social cohesion advocate, who's been fighting for the rights and justice and freedom of the Sahrawi people. And generally, she's just an advocate for people that are in distress, people that are in pain. And yes, she's an excellent humanitarian, who really goes the extra mile in helping and serving individuals near and far, local and international. That's Sister Catherine Constantinides, somebody who's undoubtedly very, very close to me. A little later, we're going to also be speaking to Brother Mohamed-Nour Karhani, who's from Lebanon, who's also played his part with regards to helping and assisting those that are in the refugee camps on the borders of Lebanon as well as Syria. And then we have somebody who's extremely dear to us, none other than Dr. Hany al-Banna, who we regard as the father of humanitarians. Many of us that are in a humanitarian fraternity now, we owe it to none other than Dr. Hany al-Banna. They say old is gold, but subhanAllah, we pray to Allah Ta'ala Azza wa Jal that He preserves him and protects him. He has really set the standard and He has really set the goal in bringing about such standards and showing us, the new generation of humanitarians, how to carry ourselves out. And then we are also so fortunate this evening. And yes, and we have to thank Sister Ola Bata, subhanAllah, she is a Syrian herself. And imagine coming from that, from a war zone, coming from a conflict zone, amidst all the challenges of life, amidst all the trials and tribulations. Wow, here she prospers, comes into Turkey, educates herself, doing so much. And sets up base in helping and assisting her fellow countrymen. So we're going to also speak to her. Each one of these individuals bring a wealth of experience and a wealth of light to the Syrian conflict. We're going to listen to them. Unfortunately, we had the Al Imdad Foundation country director of the UK, Sadiq Patel, but there's been a funeral in the family. One of the close family friends have passed on due to COVID. This is the new normal, and we pass our condolences to that family. So sadly, he will not be making it this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, to the entire panel that is here with me this evening, thank you so much for your time, on this Tuesday evening when you could have been spending your time. We have our brother Mohamed-Nour sitting in Istanbul. We have Sister Ola Bata. I'm not sure whether she's in Istanbul right now or which part of Turkey. And I've got my dear sister Catherine Constantinides and myself, Ziyaad. We are sitting in Johannesburg, South Africa. And then we have Dr. Hany Banna, who's sitting down in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Welcome to the Syrian conflict, a humanitarian perspective, 9 years on. Perhaps I do know that Sister Catherine needs to leave us very, 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 very soon. Perhaps let me bring you in, Sister Catherine, and maybe you can share with us your sentiments. What has this done over the last 9 years for you?
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum, and to all of the people who are watching us this evening. It's really wonderful to be a part of this panel. I will stay for as long as I can, but I think it's really important for me as a humanitarian to reflect on the fact that 9 years on, how much has truly changed. You earlier mentioned the orphans specifically, you mentioned the women and children. Those that suffer under these kinds of conditions and conflict zones and areas all over the world suffer the most, and often are the ones that are forgotten. They're the ones that are somehow just, we forget that these humanitarian conflicts pain generations and generations to come, because it's these very children who carry with them the memory of this conflict, the pain and the suffering that they are going through. And for generations to come, we will still remember specifically the Syrian conflict. We will remember it because it becomes part of who we are as a people and as a generation. And most specifically, I think my sister Ola will be able to speak to this and will be able to attest to the pain and the anguish, because surely this is the year 2020 and we can send a man to the moon. We can connect people from all corners of the earth via technology in any way or form. And yet we see human suffering now in ways that we cannot even comprehend. And the world continues. People continue to live in their silos, in their own bubbles, and they continue to just carry on with life as normal. But life is far from normal. I think that we have to really pause and we have to start to understand and question for ourselves, what is our own value system? What is it that we have lost as humanity, that we find ourselves in these situations and having to discuss and unpack the pain and suffering of Syrians 9 years on? 9 years, it's an entire decade. And what have we truly been able to achieve? When we look at the stats from bodies such as the United Nations, World Food Programme, and many others, we see the suffering of Syrian refugees now more than ever. We see the need now more than ever. And so I have to really question, what is it about our humanity that lacks? Where have we lost the fiber and the thread of what it is that makes us connect with one another? In South Africa, we have a beautiful term called Ubuntu. And Ubuntu really speaks about, I am only who I am because of another. And I think that is so true. But we have to ask ourselves, what is our moral compass? Where have we gone wrong, and where have we failed ourselves and each other as human beings? Because the Syrian conflict is one of so many that is going on across the world right now. And the suffering and the pain of people is so deep and so painful for each and every one of us that we have to stand up and we have to start to do more. We have to be responsible for each other. And I think it starts with asking ourselves what our value system really, really is.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Catherine, I know that you're also a climate activist. I know you're a climate activist. Hold that thought there. How has the climate, from a climate perspective, has this conflict affected the climate? Has it affected the terrain in Syria? And what's the way forward? I'm going to come back through to you. I'm going to come back to you. But let me quickly bring our father in, none other than Dr. Hany al-Banna. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Doctor, كيف حالك? أهلا وسهلا وأهلا بكم. Thank you so much for joining us. It's such an inspiration just to see you, Dr. Hany. You've inspired every one of us on this panel, our entire lives. You are our senior. And thank you so much for your time. At this age, you still go the extra mile to serve humanity. Doctor, perhaps I will just digress a bit. Maybe you can tell us first and foremost, what drives you to be such a passionate humanitarian at this age?
It's too much to be said about somebody, actually, and you said a lot, which I think I do not deserve what you have said. Alhamdulillah. I can consider myself as a street worker. I love Africa very much, so close, so dear to my heart. I'm not hiding this love to Africa, no matter what. The issue of Syria and the issue of how I became one of the workers in this field goes back nearly 37 years ago. When we were looking at the problems of famine in the Horn of Africa in Eritrea. At the time of 1983, when we found that we don't have an organization to represent the voice of Muslims in the whole Europe, and that's why we started Islamic Relief at that time. As we were medical students, we started with no resources, no office, no vision, nothing. But our objective, and this for the young people, was work for the famine in Africa, the famine in Eritrea, the famine in Tigray at that time. And we started from nowhere, and we are somewhere now, alhamdulillah. We started from no office to having for more than 40 countries that the organization is working there. And this is how we started. The humanitarian work is like a seed, a good seed, fruitful seed. You need to plant it in a very fertile soil. And alhamdulillah, we did together collectively as group of young postgraduate students in UK in 1983-84 to enable us to see what's happening nowadays. So the passion about that is what the sister was talking about it earlier on. It is the agony of the people that they are suffering. The number of the displacement and refugees and destitute that you can see, the tears in the eyes of the children and the broken heart women and widows and elderly men. If this does not move you and me, there's something wrong with our humanity in our heart, with our value system, with our belief, and with our moral values as well. So this is what we need to ask the young people to look at themselves inside themselves, to look at their souls, to look at their mind, to look at their spirit, to enable them to build such a very powerful soul, to enable them to fly high to different parts of the world, to stand for justice and to stand for freedom with Sister Catherine and others as well. Because in Syria, it is an absolute crime against humanity. 9 years, and this nearly in the year 10 now, in displacement is disgrace upon humanity, upon the international world or the international community, upon every one of us. We keep feeding what we do not try to stop the atrocity and the killing and the bombing and displacement of people. So Syria is worse than the Second World War. It's worse than the displacement happened after the Second World War by all the standards. We thought that Bosnia will be the worst, but Syria became the worst and still going on under the eyes and ears of the international community, where actually the most we can do, just give some money to the people in Syria to make them happy, and this will be the end of your role as sadaqah or as zakah or as lillah. It's sadaqah and zakah and lillah when we spend our time, when we spend our effort, when we exercise our soul to fight back what's happening in Syria and what actually happening to our Syrian children, women, widows, and elderly there. So it is an ongoing process of learning, Maulana. That actually, the more you learn about humanitarian work, and the more you be with people, and the more you mix with people, the more the people will drive your soul high to find solution for their problems. And this is what keep people going on, whether and come to South Africa to a place in the shanty town in Johannesburg or in Durban or in Cape Town, or we'll go to Syria, or we'll go to Yemen, or we'll go to any part of the world.
Thank you so much for that, Doctor. Just for the benefit of our viewers out there, Alhamdulillah, Doctor has also been knighted. He has an OBE. He's also headed and founded the Muslim Charities Forum in the UK, as well as Zakat House. Subhanallah, Doctor has an amazing career behind him, an amazing legacy. May Allah Ta'ala Azza wa Jal take you further. Let me quickly bring in my beloved brother, Mohamed-Nour. Subhanallah, last week we spent many a times together in Istanbul. He's a veteran humanitarian that has worked extensively in the refugee camps, the Syrian refugee camps in particular, in Lebanon. I had the opportunity of working side by side with him in some of those refugee camps in Lebanon. Mohamed-Nour, 9 years on, you've been working on the ground, firsthand with the refugees, day in, day out, initiating projects, programs, for their betterment, for their well-being. What can you tell us in a nutshell, your sentiments, your feelings, knowing that it's 9 years on and the conflict still continues?
Well, good evening, everyone. It's really a big honor for me to be in this interview where humanity unifies us. Also, allow me, Brother Ziyaad, to greet our role model, Dr. Hany Banna. I know him from a lot of conferences, and I know that whenever we have to evaluate this conference, we have to bring Dr. Hany Banna. Thus, I cannot appreciate what he has done, and he doesn't know for sure what he has done for humanity. I mean, in details. People looking at him as a reference. 9 years, I think you asked the very difficult question for me. I think my feelings are puzzled. By the way, I'm half Lebanese, half Syrian. I do not know anything about the other part of my family in Damascus. Even I don't dare to ask about them because I don't know what will happen for them. This is maybe my answer for your question. I witnessed inside Syria and even in Lebanon, a lot of people. I don't know how to say it, but very strong scenes. Witnessed a lot of dead people, people running away. And, after 9 years, I cannot forget these scenes. And when I returned back to Lebanon, to work inside Lebanon, supporting refugees, I thought that we have finished at least part of the war. But here we started another war, but with another, let me say, kind of war, which is the humanitarian one. How to make sure that these people will live even the minimum, with the minimum standards, with the minimum acceptable standards in Lebanon, I mean for the refugees. And this is really as mean as the war that were taking place in Syria. 9 years, and no one knows when this will end. 9 years and 6.8 million displaced outside Syria and another 10 million inside Syria. billions of dollars is the amount of the destruction and the loss in the economy. In addition, the hundreds of thousands. This is the most important dead people, and over 2.5 million either have sustained injuries or certain damage. What can I say? This is
Mohamed-Nour, perhaps if I may just interject, you've been working so actively in these refugee camps. When you would go into these refugee camps, what feeling would you experience day in and day out? What would enter your heart? I want you to give our viewers a kind of a sentiment of what you would experience, your feelings, your emotions, when you go in there, when you interact, because you've been working with these people day in and day out. People like myself who live very, very, very far away from the conflict, we only visit the regions at intermittent times. Whereas yourself, subhanAllah, day in and day out, every single day of your life, you were interacting either with the new refugee comers or those that have already been in the refugee camps for some time. Maybe explain to us your emotions and your feelings and experiences.
Well, no one can really express these feelings because every day you go to these camps, you will hear you will listen to some of the stories of the people that you have to listen, because you cannot just leave them like this. Maybe a widow, how did she lost her husband? Some of the orphans. You will see the disabled people. You will see people with sustained injuries until now, disabled. Every day you have to see these pictures. You have to listen to them, and we are how can I say it? We are getting filling with these. Let me say, bad stories, bad images that we are listening to, and I'll be honest. Sometimes I feel like I have to run away from this, because it's really pressuring. It's really pressuring. You cannot imagine hearing how a widow lost her husband, and she started to tell you the details of what happened. And then you have to go back to your house and just thinking about this day. It's unimaginable, really.
Jazakallah khairan for those sentiments. Let me bring in our very, very, very dear sister, Sister Ola Bata, and subhanAllah, she's a Syrian on this panel of ours, mashallah. She's come from the conflict. She's been in Syria before the conflict. She's experienced the conflict, and I'm rest assured that today she can really bring for us an image of what it means to be a refugee, what it means to restart your life. Sister Ola, welcome to the program. Perhaps tell us a bit more about yourself, a bit more about your background, and then give us your sentiments, what you take with regards to 9 years on the Syrian conflict. Sister Ola.
Okay. So good evening, all. It's an honor actually to join you again on a session about Syria. And to make a brief about myself, first of all, I am Ola Batta. I'm a Syrian refugee. I live in Turkey. I've been living in Turkey for almost 5 years, and I lived the first 4 years actually in Syria, in the war parts, in the war-torn parts in Aleppo City, in eastern Aleppo City specifically. When I came actually here, I was a graduate from the university, because when the conflict started, I was almost 21 years ago. And I managed to finalize my study by the year of the launch of the revolution. And then when I came to Turkey, I restarted working on myself, learning, first of all, the language, and second, trying to find an opportunity in order to study in addition to my work. Because also I'm a humanitarian worker. I've been working in the humanitarian sector for 9 years, starting with the Syrian revolution itself, when we started actually from the, you can say, from the regime areas before Aleppo city was divided. This was early 2012. By the mid of 2012, when the city was divided into two parts, I had to live in the eastern parts of the city, and I had actually to live for 3 years there, 3 or 4 years there, under the bombs and shelling. But it was actually nothing in front of the suffering of the people. When you start helping people there, when you live with them, and start offering the aid for them and start supporting them, and you see directly what is the effect of your work actually inside Syria, you would really feel what does it mean to be a humanitarian worker specifically. Thank you for Dr. Hany. Actually, he gave us a lot of words about how Syrian conflict now is worse even than any other conflict maybe over the world that has been mentioned, even the Serbian one. Yes, I agree. It was worse. It was not only worse in the duration, it was worse also in the violence that Syria has witnessed, in the degree of violence actually that Syrian people have witnessed, in the complexity itself of the conflict, and how different parts also were involved in this conflict. So, to give also a hint, answering your question about what does it mean to be a refugee and to start your life over again, and first of all, I would like to mention that now what we had a feeling for all refugees almost, I think that we can start our life over and over. It is, I mean, for us, nothing now is impossible. And starting over and over, even from another country, even if we get out from, for example, the place that we're living in, would be possible, because we witnessed what does it mean to cross a border alone, to come to a country with a different language. Even, I mean, even if it is closer to the culture, but at the end, it is different people, it is different language. You have to suffer in order to facilitate all your life. Uh, what I can say that it was not easy, in terms of the of first of all planning what you shall do, in terms of knowing what is the type of life that you're going to live. But at the end, I can say that as young people and as youth that came here, we have been able to overcome this through our continuous hope that we will get back to our country. And when we are going back there, or when we are back there, we should be stronger. Our country wouldn't need us when we are weak, and that's why we have to be stronger. So,
Sister Ola,
yeah.
if I may interject, what do you see the future of Syria? You're a Syrian. Do you see there's a hope of going back home? Do you see your country being rebuilt again? What do you see of the future of Syria?
Well, it is not an easy question at all, because the one who is watching now the Syrian situation and the context itself can know how difficult it is to explain this question. For me, when in 2016, after I lost actually my house in Aleppo city, and after I lost even the hope to get back to Aleppo city when it was over controlled by the regime forces, uh, I had the hope so weak, and you can say I almost had no hope that I will get back to Syria. The hope started to revive again in me when I got back again to work with the IDPs themselves. But what I can say now about the Syrian situation, that it is so complex, and even for the political analyst and for the military analyst, it is one of the most complex parts actually in the world. No one can guess what will happen in Syria, even if some people would tell you that they will get back. I think that this will be a kind of far to talk about to dream. I'm not sure actually if we are talking about getting back to Syria, this can be happening in 5 years, because when we were talking about this 4 years ago or 3 years ago, it was not possible. and it was getting further from us. So I think that for all Syrian refugees, in order to build a good life for them and in order to be really strong people, depending on themselves, independent people, they should first of all think about the context and the countries that they are living in. They should be building their own life, and then thinking about Syria. Of course, this should be thought about, but it shouldn't be, you can say, a soon a dream, because I don't think that this is happening soon.
Thank you, Sister Ola. Let me quickly bring in Sister Catherine here. Catherine, I do know you work with the Sahrawi people and you're very, 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 very passionate about them. I'm just going to pick up on the point, on the question which I asked Sister Ola. In these conflict situations, do you see some kind of hope, whether it is the Rohingyan refugees, the Palestinian refugees, or are the refugees across the globe? Because it seems to me as if the wheels of justice, the wheels of freedom, it seems to grind at a very, very slow pace.
Indeed, the wheels of justice turn very, very slowly. And sometimes it seems as if so much is happening and so much gets done, but it's almost the analogy of you can never see a ship turn. It's something, it's turning, but you don't see it turn. And with the Sahrawi refugees, when you look at the suffering on the ground, and I have no doubt, having followed your own journey and the work of the Ali Dad Foundation, seeing the work being done across refugee camps the world over, the pain and suffering of the people is so much to bear that you cannot understand why justice does not work at a quicker rate. Why is it that we cannot give people hope in a much faster and rapid way, where the suffering is just so deeply entrenched in the communities where these people are forced to live? And Qari, Ziyaad, if you will allow me, I just want to quickly share something that I came across before we spoke this evening, and it was a comparison specifically on the Syrian refugees in numbers and a perspective on numbers. And I'd like to just quickly share it because it gives you a different concept and it makes you think differently about the Syrian crisis specifically. It says that almost 500,000 lives have been claimed. It has wounded almost 2 million people and generated 4.8 million refugees, and it has displaced more than 7 million people within Syria. However, if we had to translate that into American numbers, taking America as it was with its current population, it would equate to exactly the same. 9.6 million people would have been killed, 32 million people wounded, 76.8 million people would be refugees fleeing America, and 96 million people would be displaced within America. And if you look at that catastrophic proportion, the world would be doing so much more. If we look at the numbers in a different context, why is it that we're not as outraged as we should be? The situation on the ground in refugee camps is horrifying, and our humanity bears for us to do something, and we're not doing enough.
Thank you for that, Sister Catherine. Thank you. I'm still going to come back to you with regards to climate change, etc. I know you're very, very, very passionate for climate change, and you're a change agent, undoubtedly. So we're going to speak a bit about that a little later. Dr. Hany, 5 years ago, exactly 5 years ago on this date, I was on the island of Lesbos. And to see those little boats, those little rubber dinghies coming from Turkey and gracing the shores of Lesbos, and some people coming so close to death. And to be honest with everyone out there, many people on the ground in Lesbos have said to us that the seabed on the channel between Turkey and Lesbos, to a great extent, is actually strewn with bodies. That is how many people have lost their lives in trying to come or trying to attain a better life. Dr. Hany, you've been through a long period of life, a professional life, a private life. You've assisted so many people in your career. What do you see happening with the Syrian conflict? Do you think there is an end in sight? Do you think there is some kind of hope? Do you think that tomorrow will turn a new leaf and a new page when things will come back to some kind of normality? In the last few weeks, I was interacting with a lot of Syrian refugees, and we had worked extensively in the border region between Syria and Turkey. And to some kind of level, there seems to be a little kind of normality coming. What is your intuition, or what is your gut feeling with regards to the future of Syria and the Syrian conflict?
Alhamdulillah, there are two things which you need to realize, Maulana, before we talk about solution. Did we lose our morality or not?
Undoubtedly, I think yes.
Of it, unfortunately, at the moment, because the decision makers, or the global decision makers, has nothing to lose. They are sitting in their own countries. They are thinking about which part to benefit them, whether this part or this part or this part or this part. This politically and militarily. The second challenge is the terrorist groups like ISIS and others. Have we seen the end of them? Or who is behind them? Or who is funding them? And how they get their machinery, vehicles and others, to this area, whether it's in Syria and Iraq. And we have seen and heard what they have been doing to the Syrian and the Iraqi people in Syria and Mosul, and even for the Yazidi brothers and sisters as well. So when we look at this group as well, who is behind it? Before we start talking about peace, this is second challenge. The third challenge, who is dividing the Syrian community inside and outside? There are people dividing them, as we were talking this morning in a conference called WAF, World Humanitarian Action Forum, about colonization of aid. Is our aid connected to our colonial way of thinking, or it is connected to our moral or immoral way of thinking? This is another thing which you need to talk about it.
I think, Doctor, that's a very, very important point. Conditional aid, because we find a lot of aid trickling into this region. There's a lot of aid coming in, but there's a lot of conditions attached to it. Hence, we find that life cannot change as rapidly for the better as we would anticipate it to be. This is because there's so much of conditions attached to the aid which is coming there. Secondly, what I've also noticed when we talk about conditional aid is that sometimes the projects on the ground don't seem to be too relevant. What's your take on this, Doctor?
Okay, let me carry on, because I was trying to organize for the first time, trying to be challenged by the young ladies and the old man, Muhammad. You are the oldest man.
Subhanallah.
And, the second thing, the third or the fourth challenge is Syria now are not one community. They are clusters of people living in different camps in Turkey, different camps in Jordan, different camps in Lebanon, and even inside Syria in the displacement, there are different people living in different camps. Now they are having different cultures, different values, different morality. So if you think that peace is tomorrow and you bring everybody back to Syria tomorrow, there will be a big conflicting issue, because the new cultures, they adopted the new values, they adopted outside in the refugees camp or during the displacement. This is number 4. Number 5, if you talk about the mass destruction of the history of Syria, of the housing and infrastructure, it is not hundreds of billions, it's more and more than that, plus the lives of the 500 people plus. This is number 5 or number 6. Number 6 or 7, it is the education. We lost one generation. Young children at the age of 10 cannot read the word called Allah or Muhammad or Ali or whatever it is. Have you seen the plastic bottle boy who was working the whole day for 3 Turkish lira? with his mother. It was a video somewhere taken by one of the amateurs. Have you seen the frozen children who died in Lebanon during the month of the winter time? They are actually dead. And if we talk about the boat people, or those people lost hope to live anywhere, and even they took the risk to die in the middle of the ocean or in the middle of the sea to try to reach a safe place or a safe haven. But unfortunately, Europe is not welcoming them. If you look at the number of refugees inside Turkey, inside Lebanon, inside Jordan, and the number of refugees have been received by Europe and America, you cannot compare between Turkey, Europe, between Turkey, Jordan, and Lebanon, about nearly to be 5.5 to 6 million. Europe, maybe apart from Germany, be all of it, maybe 1 million people, and not all of them Syrian. By the way, not all the boat people who crossed to Germany are Syrian. Only 30 to 40% of them were Syrian. And these are the challenges, Maulana.
Undoubtedly, I think there's many challenges attached to this conflict, and hence it seems that the future of Syria still seems very bleak. And this is my take. Mohamed-Nour, Sister Ola, you people have been very close to this conflict. You are close on the ground to this conflict, and do you find that I would say donor fatigue is starting to set in? Because for how long? This is such a huge conflict. It has manifested itself on so many different parts of the world and so many different borders. For how long are we going to continue trying to assist and trying to help, and when we don't have sustainable solutions? What's your take on this?
I will let Sister Ola to start.
Okay, thank you. Well, before actually talking about donor fatigue, I would like to highlight a fact here that looking at the Syrian conflict and looking at the rate and degrees of violence that it was going through, and looking at the duration of it, and on the other hand, looking at the humanitarian responses towards Syrian conflict, we would see that there is a great imbalance actually between them. First of all, a great imbalance in terms of the responses that have been done, specifically at the beginning. I'm not sure actually why the international community was thinking that Syrian people were in need of food at the beginning of the conflict when they were in most need for justice, first of all. Really. I'm not sure why, for example, the international community was thinking that Syria would need, for example, to be, you can say, loaded with the funds that have not been even relevant to the humanitarian responses, or have not been even relevant to the future of Syria in the first 4 or 5 years of the conflict. Yes, there is a huge donor fatigue. I'm sorry to tell that we have started to know this very well by the beginning of 2020. I can say that things in the world that has been happening, specifically with the COVID-19, and how the countries and international communities started to look at their own countries, and each country started to look at their own, national security, and to empower their own people, etc. I started to notice how this started to affect the Syrian community, and how the Syrian community was for almost 9 years, you can say, built on humanitarian responses. What I noticed that now in Syria we have something called it is the ecosystem of a humanitarian responses, or it is the humanitarian system that is building actually the ecosystem in Syria. There is a huge relation between them. And unfortunately, now when the international community is trying to drag, or when we are noticing such a kind of donor fatigue, there is no any plan for the exit itself. It is just cut. It is just off without any plan how Syrian people would continue after this. 9 years and all responses that have been done to Syria were almost, you can say, emergency. We're almost trying to feed the Syrian people, to give the Syrian people food basket, to give them, for example, the non-food items, etc. I cannot say that these were not beneficial, and I cannot say that they were not useful. Yes, to certain degree they were useful. To certain degree, Syrian people needed them in certain places. But at the beginning, they were not, first of all, the need at the beginning of the conflict. And second, the type of responses and the way that the responses were done were not so relevant to the Syrian people and to their needs. And now we reach to a degree where we're facing donor fatigue. And on the other part, also, we're facing, you can say, local community fatigue or fragility. You know, you have a fragile local community, you have fragile Syrian people inside Syria, displaced or even host community, both or on the same level. And now you're almost having maybe even like less than 25% of the fund that has been sent to Syria, for example, in 2014 or 13.
Brother Mohamed-Nour, your comments with regards to donor fatigue. You've been working in the refugee camps. You know, I mean, you guys need the resources to help and assist people day in and day out. Your comments on this?
I totally agree with Sister Ola of what she said, and I will provide you with some statistics from Lebanon, which I call it the refugee capital in the world, and my numbers are from UNHCR reports. 900,000 out of 1.5 million were having winter assistance this year and the year before. That means 600,000 were left with no assistance. I mean, to face the freezing weather, which you experienced before. In Lebanon, for example, if I'm talking about the borders, we are talking about people living in very freezing degrees, like less than 5 or 4 degrees. If I may, I was reading right now that 75% of the Syrian refugees were living in a residential structure. Now the percentage decreased to 69%. That means the non-residential structures increased. I mean, the percentage of people living now in tents, in shops, in warehouses, and whatever they call it, non-residential structures. 50% of them considered in dangerous conditions. I mean, even in a warehouse, even in a shop, they are considered in a dangerous conditions. This is not allowing us really moving to a really sustainable and solutions. Also, because I'm sorry to say this, but because also the regimes or the state that exist in our community, in our area, and especially I'm talking about Lebanon, they force people and they force us to stay working on emergency case, because they think that with this strategy, they will not allow the Syrian refugees to settle and for a long time, as happened with the Palestinians. This is their thinking, their point of view, which we do not agree for sure. But because of this is what we are facing. 400,000 children in the age of education out of 635,000 children, the total. 400,000, only 100,000, according to UNICEF, are now registered in public schools. We have 300,000 are outside schools, and this is for several years. I'm not talking about this year. This statistics is really repeating every year. I mean, how can we work with the sustainable and let me say developmental projects when once we have these kind of really gigantic issues? I mean, marvelous. I answered with numbers and with the statistics in order to see the same picture that we are facing here in Lebanon.
Yeah, undoubtedly, I think the statistics which you have shared with us is extremely frightening, very, very, very frightening. And I hope, and I know, Sister Ola, you made a very, very good point that I think the Syrian people needed justice first before they needed food. That's a very, 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 very potent point which you've made. Sister Catherine, in conflict zones, perhaps in this Syrian conflict, can you perhaps share with us from an environmental perspective, what will be the environmental impact in this situation or this conflict?
Well, firstly, I must just say that, if we look at Syria and where Syria is at in 2006, 2007, it saw its greatest drought that it ever had seen, and hadn't seen one like that in 900 years. And so
Wow.
that entire Fertile Crescent now saw drought, and it was heightened because of the social vulnerability, and it was definitely not the reason for what had happened. But what we have to understand is that the climate issue that we face globally certainly did have impact. Climate change did cause the 2006-2007 drought that we saw in Syria. That drought did cause agricultural collapse. It caused agricultural failure within Syria, and that led to great poverty. It was estimated that approximately 1.5 million rural dwellers started to move into the cities. And even though we understand what the robust agricultural sector was in Syria, we have to also understand that there were many ideological and policy drivers of human insecurity that impacted Syria and impacted the water and food security systems within Syria. We see a rising climate crisis, and what we have to understand is that climate refugees are hardest hit by climate change, especially within Syria, Lebanon. We look at the African continent, we look at the Horn of Africa specifically, and we can see the impacts of climate change even on those refugees. We can see the impacts on the availability of safe, clean drinking water. And we have to be conscious of these environmental elements, because what we don't always understand and remember is that we are intrinsically linked to the environment, to the earth, and we require it for so many things for our survival. But in this specific case, if we look at the robust agricultural system that Syria had, we look at the drought, and the drought that was definitely impacted by climate change, we can see a lot of other additional pressuring elements ahead of the Syrian crisis that we saw unfold.
Undoubtedly, Sister Catherine, I can see within this conflict, there are various different aspects, perspectives, different avenues which are now coming together, converging together, and further worsening and exacerbating the already bad situation with regards to the Syrian brothers and sisters out there. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time for a break. And to all of our viewers out there who are viewing us right now live on the various platforms of Salam Media, stay tuned. We're going to go in for a short break. It's amazing how quickly time runs. We're already close to an hour since we are speaking, but undoubtedly, various facets, various perspectives. There's so much to talk about, whether it's from an environmental perspective, a social perspective, a financial perspective, just human perspective, purely human perspective. So much has been destroyed, so much is at risk here, and so much has been has gone wrong over the last 9 years, and there's so much to talk about. Going forward, stay tuned. We'll be back with you shortly. Thank you so much.
And stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media, coming to you live from South Africa.
Osman's Taj Mahal Spice and Rice. For over 80 years, Osman's Taj Mahal have been perfecting the art of the perfect blend of spices, pure, aromatic, and well-seasoned. Spices to tantalize your taste buds. From creative cuisines to gastronomical gourmet goodies. From exotic odors to traditional dishes, Osman's Taj Mahal have remained synonymous with quality spices and condiments. Taj Mahal rice, beans, and lentils. Try our range of chili bite mixes, rose and ilachi syrup, our quick and easy biryani pack, and our traditional range of spice blends. Osman's Taj Mahal. There is no substitute for quality.
We want the best for our children. A happy home, good health, and education. But for 140 million children around the world, this is just a dream. A life after having lost one or both parents is a struggle for survival. These children have nobody to keep them safe. At Islamic Relief, we believe in protecting our children. We believe in giving them hope for the future and support their dreams. With one act of love, you can save a life of a precious child, and you can be the reason for their happiness. Support a child with Islamic Relief today.
It's the biggest sale of the year. Black Friday all weekend long with Randery Jewelers. From the 27th to the 29th of November. You can expect fantastic special offers, ridiculously low prices, and loads of fun. With free foot massages for the ladies, free henna application, and a sumptuous high tea. Follow Randery Jewelers on Instagram to view our specials and enter the competition where you can win a diamond ring valued at 4,000 Rand. Visit www.randeryjewelers.com to shop online. Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
As winter grips the Northern Hemisphere, refugees, IDPs, and other vulnerable communities are doing all they can to survive. Winter is already the hardest time of year, and in the current global context, this year could be even worse. With your help, the Al-Imdad Foundation is delivering life-saving winter warmth items in 12 countries globally, including Syria, Palestine, Yemen, Kashmir, and Pakistan. So be warm-hearted and sponsor a winter pack at just 600 Rand. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
نحنا أطفال الشام شوفوا شو صاير فينا قتل وتشريد وخوف رعب مسيطر علينا نحنا أطفال الشام شوفوا شو صاير فينا قتل وتشريد وخوف رعب مسيطر علينا أحلام الطفولة فينا لساتها ما كبرت معنا اللي يا ظالم هالشعب شاملنا لا تقتلنا أحلام الطفولة فينا لساتها ما كبرت معنا اللي يا ظالم هالشعب شاملنا لا تقتلنا شاملنا لا تقتلنا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Salam Media. Yes, the program this evening, Syria, the conflict continues, a humanitarian perspective. It's 9 years on, and the Syrian conflict, there doesn't seem to be light in sight. Sadly, there does not seem to be any light in sight. The suffering continues, the pain continues, the trials continue, the displacement continues. And undoubtedly, this is the reality of the times that we are living in. Very, 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 very sad indeed. I've just got back from the zone. I just got back from the ground where we have been assisting refugees in the various refugee camps. And the scenes that play out, the scenes that we see, the interactions with the various different refugees, those that have been affected by this conflict, it really grips the heart. Undoubtedly, it grips the heart, it grips the soul. And I always say this, that children are the first casualty of war. Children are always the first casualty of war. And it's sad, adults, because of egoistical traits, because of egoistical trends, they vested egos, sadly, children have to suffer. Children got to bear the brunt of their egoistical decisions which have been taken. So yeah, there's a fight on poverty. There's a fight for justice. There's a fight against all wrong across the globe. There's a fight for freedom. And I think as human beings, every one of us, the least we can do is try and bring about some kind of positivity in the lives of those that are not as fortunate as ourselves. Alhamdulillah, this evening, once again, I am surrounded by a galaxy of humanitarians from across the globe, from here at home, Sister Catherine in Johannesburg, Dr. Hany al-Banna down in the UK, Brother Mohamed-Nour, who's of Lebanese descent, but right now presently sitting in Istanbul. And then we have with us also our Sister Ola Bata, who comes from the background, a Syrian background, who has experienced a bit of the war, and she's actually living a life of a refugee. And subhanAllah, she has gone against all the odds of life, and she's actually made a life for herself. So Sister Ola, undoubtedly, you are truly an inspiration for us. Sister Catherine, Brother Mohamed-Nour, Sister Ola, and Dr. Hany, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time this evening. We've come together. We are pooling our resources. We're discussing, the Syrian conflict. It's 9 years on. We've shared a lot of statistics, painful statistics. We've shared a lot of our sentiments. We've shared a lot of our emotions and our personal experiences. And we've also spoken of what the future means for Syria. But, we don't have a lot of time left. There's not much time left. Time ticks very, 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 very quickly here in the studio. We've spoken a bit about the environmental impact. Right now, I just want to speak a bit about what it means for us personally, or anyone out there who is viewing us right now on Salam Media. What can they do to perhaps bring about some kind of positive change? What can they do to bring about some kind of relief, going forward? We've spoken about donor fatigue, but we cannot just sit back and say, okay, we give up. We cannot do that. The human spirit is very, 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 very strong. All of us are very, very, very strong within our own ways. And I always feel every one of us have this burning light within us. We have this inner strength. What is the way forward? How can we remedy, and how can we continue to soldier on and try and continue to better the situation? Yes, alhamdulillah, I do represent the Al-Imdad Foundation, and we have made a firm commitment that no matter whatever happens, amidst all the odds, whether there's donor fatigue or not, we're going to try and continue to sustain our projects in helping and assisting our brothers and sisters out there. Unfortunately, they find themselves in such a situation, in such a position where they cannot fend for themselves. Yes, sadly, they are dependent right now, and many of them are trying to become independent. Hence, they venture out into different parts of the world trying to make a life for themselves. Just generally, we as a whole, what can we do? What can we do to try and bring some kind of well-being for the Syrian people, and perhaps to find some kind of light at the end of the tunnel? Perhaps I'll start with the most senior of us on the panel. Dr. Hany, what is your advice going forward with regards to the Syrian conflict?
Thank you. The Syrian people have been struggling over the last 9 years to build local civil society organization, whether inside Syria or outside Syria, particularly in Turkey. I don't think that in Lebanon and Jordan have got as many organizations as it's in Turkey. And this is where can we start? From the bottom up, from the local municipality and the local civil society organization, to try to connect and raise the awareness. Unfortunately, a sister, where's my glasses? Sister علا بطة ولا علا بطة؟ بطة مش كده؟ بطة بسم الله ما شاء الله. Sister علا بطة was saying our humanitarian response is just for food and drink and clothes, and also what Brother Muhammad was saying as well. 4 or 5 years ago, the Syrian people inside said enough is enough for food basket. And I'm saying this to your viewers. Enough is enough. Enough is enough for food basket. They keep selling the food basket, which is cost about $30, $40, to the $5, $6 inside Syria because they want the cash. The Syrian people inside and outside have capability and they can do some work, particularly the women. Bismillah, inshallah. I've got professional quality to enable them to do a lot of things. Actually, they need to start from the bottom up approach. I said, talk about civil society organization, talk about local markets, building local markets. I'm sorry to say that maybe inside Syria, a market which would be based on the home product. There's a lot of talented young Syrian people. What I would like to say to any South African brother and sister, the Syrian people and any refugee camp in the world has got a very talented, educated individuals. The only problem that they became refugee. The only problem that became displaced. That's why we look down at them, and we saw and experienced this issue in the Bosnia War. 1993, 27 years ago. Professors, medics, and others, and lecturers, and they're standing in queue for actually a food basket or a piece of bread. We should recognize the ability of the displaced people inside Syria and the ability of the refugees outside Syria. And this is where the wealth of the human resources that we can, and this was actually our discussion this morning in the other conference in, I don't know what it was, global, actually, is about recognition of the local community, the local people, the local potential. So from local potential, local people, local civil society organization, we can start this. Other thing is we need to invest heavily in building the capacity of the local municipality. It takes a longer time. It takes a longer time to build this. It's not going to be overnight. No way. The massive destruction or the mass destruction, planned or unplanned, and theft of Syria actually will be repaired in years to come. In years to come. So education, local market, building local organization, civil society organization, local municipality, as well as if you give me the choice, Maulana, about education, I will say vocational education. I want to save those generations who might not have been able to go to school and to go to the regular education from primary to secondary to university to have a job in 3 to 6 months job, to be able to become a breadwinner. I met a young boy at the age of 12 in one of the camps in Lebanon near Bekaa Valley, and I think his name is Ali, and he was the breadwinner for a family of 5, mother and 3 other children. One of them is disabled because the mothers cannot get outside the room, not a flat. The other 2 girls with the mother cannot go because they have to help the mother, so they can't go to school. And his only dream at that time was to get a bike to take him from A to B to work in the mechanic workshop. So we have to look at those people and give them the tools to enable them to start as our grandfathers and generation past, actually to rebuild the infrastructure of the local society inside Syria. From there, we'll be able to go to the second phase. You know what will happen nowadays, brother Maulana and sister Catherine and Muhammad and Ola? They will drown us with this big amount of money for reconstruction. Give the money to a very weak government. Give the money to there's no system to make governments accountable to, from the municipality or the civil society organization. So the corruption will be incredible, magnanimous. The billions of dollars will be claimed to go to rebuild or Syria again will go to down to the drain. So I am anti, and take it from me, Sister Ola and Brother Muhammad and Sister, I am anti the billions to come to be put in the hands of the weak government and non-existing, actually local municipality or stronger civil society organization to control or to monitor the expenditure. Unfortunately, and be corruption above corruption above corruption. I am with that the Syrian people can live. I've been living in no man's land nowadays inside Syria. If they have the hope, they can build their country in stages. Primitive stage, and we go from primitive to higher up, but give them peace. What the Syrian people nowadays, they want peace. They don't want our help. Give them peace, and they'll be able to function, and be able to be a productive, become very productive nation as they were before. But without peace, no matter how much billions of dollars you spend, it's going to be wasted, unfortunately. Peace and safety is what we want in Syria. We don't want food because we can produce food. We don't want clothes because we can produce clothes. We don't want furniture because we can produce furniture, and we can build our own house. But give us peace. Let us think effectively. How can we live in peace? Then we can build partnership between one another.
Thank you so much for that, Doctor. To those of you out there that are watching us live on these various platforms, you're more than welcome to comment. You're more than welcome to send us any questions if you do have. We had our sister Nisha Fargiz, who just messaged us right now, and she says, climate refugees will always be hardest hit by climate change. A very, 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 very powerful statement indeed. Catherine, perhaps you can pick up on this statement. Climate refugees will always be hardest hit by climate change.
I think that this, of course, this is a very important statement. Where the world is at, what we require, and going, on from what our previous speaker has just shared with us. I think that the political will needs to be there, and what we still do not see when it comes to the climate change challenge, which is one of our greatest challenges, layered on top of all of this, we don't see political will. We do not see the will to see justice served, to see peace and security. Unfortunately, we're living in a time and day and space where an elite few benefit, and so the status quo remains in place. And this is something that is greatly challenging and truly it grates at my own humanity, because if you understand so many of the crises we find ourselves in the world over, you will understand that the political will is just not there, because those that are in specific positions of power do not want to change that. So I think when it comes to climate change, when it comes to conflict, when it comes to seeing justice being served, as my sister Ola said, they just wanted justice, and what they were getting was a food basket. We need to really go back to the basic principles of what people want, not what we think serves them, but what it is that a country and a people actually want. And in this case, political will is something that we need to fight for. And enough is enough. Mr. Banna said enough is enough earlier, and I cannot stress this enough. Enough is enough for all of our refugees. And the Syrian crisis should come now to an end. It cannot be that we continue having the same conversation. We require political will. We require ongoing awareness and education. And awareness such as the awareness that you drive, Qari Ziyaad Patel, is unbelievable. You keep this conversation alive in our country here in South Africa, so far removed from the crisis. And it is that kind of international solidarity that is required in order for us to put pressure on our leaders, in order for political will to step into place, even if it's forced, but most importantly, for peace and security, for justice to be served. We need that constant awareness and constant education of voices such as Mohamed-Nour and Olabata, who speak from a reference of being on the ground. We need that education to continue to filter in through society, so that when we talk about issues such as climate change, poverty, when we talk about building back better, we never forget the people of Syria.
Sister Catherine, what I want to say is that, as human beings, dialogue is so important. And I honestly feel that through dialogue, we can get through so many challenges of life. Yes, it is only natural that sometimes human beings will be different. Some may like orange juice, some may like apple juice, some may like the color red, some may like the color purple. So human beings will be different, and we will not agree on every single thing. And sometimes conflicts will be there. But I'm saying that we have the option of dialogue, and through dialogue, we can speak to one another. We can talk problems through. Why do human beings have to resort to such violence, such violence? It seems to me as if we live in a time when human beings have even lost their natural humanity. And that's how I honestly feel. So I think for myself personally, going forward, yes, we need to have awareness with regards to the Palestinian conflict, to the Syrian conflict, the Sahrawi conflict, the Rohingyan conflict, all these conflicts which are happening in different parts of the world. Yes, awareness is very, 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 very important. But I think even for me, more than that for me, is to stimulate dialogue, to stimulate discussions between the conflicting parties, bring them across on the same table. And I'm rest assured, we have a brain, we have intellect, we are an intelligent species. We can talk through our problems. We don't have to resort to the violence and to all of this kind of the sickening sickness that we see playing out before our eyes. Because I tell you, when you're out there in the ground, the pain and the suffering that you see day in and day out, when you see a child, a little girl at the age of 12, and she has no legs anymore. You see a youngster of 21 years old has lost a hand, lost a limb. And these are just innocent people, totally innocent people who have nothing much to do with this conflict. I ask people, a child of 12 years old, what does she know with regards to this conflict? But now her entire life has been destroyed. And I say once again, awareness is very, very, very important. But even more important than that, world leaders, we need to stimulate dialogue, especially in all of these conflicting zones. Mohamed-Nour, what do you see is the future of Syria? And what do you say perhaps can bring some kind of remedy and relief to the situation at hand?
Back to the very hard questions. And wherever we go, we are asked the same question. I'll be very realistic because I lived and raised with Palestinians in Lebanon, and I can see the Syrians are experiencing and passing almost through the same circumstances. Both of them said that when they left their houses and homes and lands, they said that it will be a few days, few weeks, few months, and we will come back. And some of them, they still have this house keys or keys for their houses. Yes, the same with the Syrians, the Palestinians. The same story is really, it's like replicating. That's why, because of this, I have to be very realistic. Also, because what we have passed off, I just want to give one example about a previous subject. Why we are talking now again about emergency projects. For example, in Lebanon, when I was with Urda, we established the camps, the biggest camps, as you know, in Lebanon, which hosted and really were one of the best camps in Lebanon. And when we started to move to the second stage, which is building developmental projects within these camps and even outside with the local communities, by the way, because you have to make this solidarity and we have to make this reconciliation between because there is a lot of conflicts between the two. Just one night, it took one night for the army. He raided the camps and he destroyed half of the camps. And I'm sure you knew about this. They returned us to stage zero. We have again to work with emergency case, and this is out of your hands. This is out of your power. But I totally agree that we have a certain time to move to this developmental stage. In Idlib, for example, we established a lot of developmental projects. I was supporting a Syrian NGO. We established, for example, the blocks workshop. We also rehabilitated a lot of farms. And this also you can consider part of the food security. We did a lot of projects, and now we are working on developing a doll which represents the displaced girl anywhere in the world. For example, this is for women. Not one workshop, a few workshops in order to also make it sustainable and sell it worldwide in order to make it sustainable for this vulnerable widows and women. You know, we are trying to make something, but at the end, as Dr. Hany said, you need that government, you need that level of working, and I don't see in the short run, not even in the few years, will happen.
Sister Ola, perhaps you're a Syrian, you've experienced the conflict, you're now technically a refugee. What is your message to the world? How do you think we can remedy the situation or the position in Syria? What would you say will bring some kind of relief? What is the best option or the best avenue to bring some kind of relief to this entire conflict playing out in Syria right now?
Well, first of all, thank you for my colleagues, actually, because what they have been talking about was really what is needed now for Syria in the future. How can I brief it, actually, what Syrians hope from the world in the future? I don't think that international community, along 9 years of war, has been able to establish the basics or principles of peace for Syria. All what we need now from international community is to help us to establish the principles of safety only. If the international community was not able to build our own peace, we will build it. We will build our own peace through supporting our sustainability, through supporting our SMEs, through supporting our young people who are, if you see them inside Syria, you would really be astonished at such power that people in the camps can have. Imagine that someone in the camp who is living in a tent that has almost no floor, that has almost, even no door. And then these people are going to school, they are going to work, they are doing two or three things once together. And at the end, by the end of the day, they still have the hope that they will leave and they will improve their own life. Unfortunately, the degree that we have reached to now as Syrian people was not as it was in 2012. In 2012, we were asking that we want justice, we want to have democracy in Syria, we want to have, for example, freedom of speech in Syria. But now, our main thinking, first of all, is to have the safety and then to start building our own peace. This peace will be through building our civil society, as Dr. Hany mentioned. It will be through supporting our sustainability as Syrians. And I'm not sure if actually the international community will do this only by their own selves. I think that what we need is more mobilization from the peoples over all the world. We need solidarity with Syrian people. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, okay, the duration of Syrian conflict is long, but I mean, it is still conflict. If it is even 9 years or if it is 20 years, it doesn't mean that this conflict has ended. I mean, I know that in different spots of this world, some people started to talk that it has been so long and they are fed up. But at the end, there are other humans in this spot, which is Syria, and they are suffering every day. They are suffering with the simplest, actually, characters of life. They are suffering with getting water, with getting, you can say, light, with getting electricity, with the simplest thing that any human actually can think about. So my message to the world is keep your voice up for the Syrian, keep solidarity with the Syrian people, and be sure that Syrian people can build their own peace if you provide them with the principles of safety and if you support their own sustainability.
Sister Ola, there's a message on the screen, and I see there's a message which has come through a question. How are the prospects of peace with the new US administration? I think the person is basically asking, with the Biden administration, do you think there will be the situation will be a bit more better with the Biden administration coming in?
Well, actually, I'm not going to answer this, but maybe the history can answer it, It has been 9 years ago with two administrations, with two American administrations. I'm sorry to tell you that in 2013, Obama administration talked about the red lines and talked about the after that chemical massacre. And what happened after that? Nothing happened. Even until now, the world is not able to criminalize the Syrian regime. And what has been done during the Trump administration, it has been getting worse. So unfortunately, my message wouldn't be to the American administration as much as it will be to the American people, to keep their solidarity with the Syrian people and to keep their voice up to support the Syrian people. Because as I mentioned, the political solution so far has been implemented has not been working. Astana has failed. Geneva is almost now on the track actually to fail. So we're not expecting a lot from the political solutions. We're expecting a lot from the civilian solutions, from the civil society, from the humanitarian solutions more as well.
Thank you so much for that, Sister Ola. Yes, the humanitarian solutions are there. And, myself, I come from the humanitarian fraternity. I represent the humanitarian fraternity. And I think we've all made a commitment. We made a commitment. I know with us at the Al Imdad Foundation, our commitment is that, we like sustainable relief. I would like to term it as sustainable relief. We don't want to have helicopter operations, go somewhere, make some noise, make some dust and leave. We prefer being there and trying to give people the best relief and to rehabilitate them in the best way possible. And that's our commitment. That's our commitment we have made to the Syrian cause and to the refugees and all those affected by the Syrian conflict. What is sometimes as a challenge for us as a humanitarian, we find that, the dynamics change very rapidly and very quickly. And hence we need to initiate new humanitarian projects, new humanitarian programs, and we hope for the best and we try for the best. Sometimes we cannot achieve the best, but we keep trying. Nevertheless, I think we've run out of time. I want to just thank my panel. I undoubtedly had an exciting 1.5 hours, very, very informative, a lot of experiences, a lot of wealth of expertise brought to the panel. Thank you so much, Sister Ola. Undoubtedly, you're an inspiration for so many of us. And, you've done so well for yourself. Our prayers and our du'as with you. Dr. Hany al-Banna, you're our father, mashallah. You are the father of all humanitarians across the globe. And that's how we look at you. You've become synonymous. You're leaving behind a fantastic legacy. May Allah Ta'ala Azza wa Jal continue to preserve you, protect you. My dear Sister Catherine, one of the closest people through to me, Sister Catherine, we make dua for you. Allah protect and preserve you. Continue doing the fantastic work you're doing, advocacy, fighting for our climate, giving the voiceless a voice. That's what you are doing, giving the orphans a voice. Those that cannot speak, you are giving them a voice, even as far as United Nations. May the Almighty bless you. And to my dearest brother Mohamed-Nour, you just started a new career as well. May Allah Ta'ala Azza wa Jal take you from strength to strength. May He open your paths. And really speaking, every one of you have done so much for humanity. Every one of you have done so much for the Syrian people. May Allah Ta'ala Azza wa Jal bless each and every one of you. Let us also take this opportunity to thank Salam Media, for always coming to the fore with these exciting webinars and these exciting programs. Very, very, very informative with the use of technology, bringing us together where we can share our opinions, share our thoughts, share our experiences. So thank you to Salam Media. And lastly and not least, to all our beloved listeners, viewers on the various platforms this evening that have joined in. Thank you so much for your comments, for watching in. And I hope and I pray that we've left you a little bit more informed, a little bit more inspired. And I pray that every one of us together, remember our roles are not competitive. Our roles are just complementary. So by coming together, bringing together our resources, our expertise, our brain power, and whatever contacts and connections we have out there, I'm rest assured we will find the light in sight for the people of Syria. And hopefully this conflict will end at 9 years. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Till next time. Barakallahu feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you.
أطفال الشام شوفوا شو صاير فينا قتل وتشريد وخوف رعب مسيطر علينا أحلام الطفولة فينا لساتها ما كبرت معنا. اللي يا ظالم هالشعب شاملنا لا تقتلنا. أحلام الطفولة فينا لساتها ما كبرت معنا. اللي يا ظالم هالشعب شاملنا لا تقتلنا. شاملنا لا تقتلنا. تستنى وبتقدر تعذبنا، بتقدر تيتمنا وبتقدر تموتنا، بس ما بتقدر تغير اللي بقلوبنا. احمونا من ضرب النار، احموا طفولتنا. هدموا فوقي سقف الدار، حرقوا مدرستنا. احمونا من ضرب النار، احموا طفولتنا. هدموا فوقي سقف الدار، حرقوا مدرستنا. يا عالم شو يلي صار، يا عالم شو يلي صار، سكوتكن بموتنا. أعطونا الطفولة،
طفل الشهيد.
من حقنا نعيش بأمان وحرية وكرامة. من حقي أحيا إنسان ارسم أحلامي. من حقنا نعيش بأمان وحرية وكرامة. من حقي أحيا إنسان وارسم أحلامي. في الحولة قتلوا الأطفال والدم النازف شلالوا. وينك يا أمتنا؟
Salam Media, a global voice for humanity.